Okay, I'd like to call the Ellis County Commission meeting to order. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Bobby, can you call roll, please?
Commissioner Nathan Liker.
Here.
Chair Neil Younger.
Here.
Commissioner Michael Burgess.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Order of business, everything should stay the same. There will be 2 executive sessions, Bobby.
Okay.
And everyone have a chance to look at the minutes?
Look fine.
Yep,
Okay.
minutes were good.
Okay, the consent agenda, everyone have a chance to look at that?
Yep. I move to approve consent agenda items A through G.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Any issues from people not on? Okay. Okay, Jennifer with the new employee.
Good morning, Jennifer Taylor, Ellis County HR, and this month I'm introducing, we have 2 new employees in our jail. We had Alexis Heckel, she is a jailer and she started last month. And then I have here with me Jordan Hecker, she is starting today and she is also a jailer. So we're excited to have them on board.
Cool.
Welcome aboard.
Okay, welcome aboard. Okay, Sarah with the Child Care Task Force.
Sarah Wassinger, Child Care Task Force of Ellis County in the Chamber in Hays, Kansas, and just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to provide an update for you as was requested last year when you were kind enough to give us some funding to help with our marketing campaign to get more child care providers into the profession. So wanted to just kind of introduce Dana Stanton. She's been a wonderful resource for us, and she also serves on the task force here, so grateful for her to join me today. But we really started this effort back in 2021 with a group meeting to just figure out what do we need to do to figure out our child care issues for Ellis County. And with our first meeting, we were very pleased with who kind of came forward, and so not only has our chamber been engaged, but we've had folks from Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Fort Hays State University, our local school districts, several of our in-home child care providers, as well as some of our center-based providers have been a part of this. Hays Med, some of our larger employers, Next Tech Wireless, as well as DSNWK. And then we also employed the services of K-State Extension and Research. One of the things that we did early on was a survey to really understand what our community needs were. And since I presented on that the last time, I was just going to give you just a couple of highlights from what we found during that survey. It did have a direct tie to our workforce needs here in Ellis County. 97.3% of the people who were surveyed back in November, December of 2021 had indicated that they would be able to re-enter the workforce if they had access to quality and affordable child care. The map that you see in front of you actually shows our May 2023 unemployment numbers as reported by Kansas Department of Labor. Our Ellis County labor force actually has 16,976 folks in it, and of those, 328 are currently unemployed. So again, it just shows that relationship of needing child care providers to really keep as many folks in the workforce as possible. And you'll note that since 2020, when the pandemic hit, our unemployment rate has really hovered underneath that 2% mark. We've only actually gone above that for 1 to 2 months since that time. So I just thought that was an important stat to share with you. Another thing that the survey had identified was the perceptions of the community and who should be involved in helping take care of childcare as a county. And so wanted to just share this slide because it did have a question on county government has a role to play in access to quality and affordable childcare. And you'll see the number highlighted there, 75 in purple, was our somewhat agree, and then 68 said they strongly agree. So I just wanted to say thank you again for the contribution that you gave for us to do the marketing campaign, and I'll go into more details as to what that's going to look like for our county. Some of the other big things that we have been working on, we are going to be scheduling some additional prospective child care provider meetings over the course of this next year. We did have meetings in Ellis, Hayes, and Victoria back in 2022. Within those meetings, we engaged with several current child care providers, as well as getting in connection with 4 additional new child care providers who are going to be starting up child care businesses. And so the point of these will just be to connect those folks who are looking at possibly doing a child care business with the resources available to them through the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Child Care Aware of Kansas, Dana Stanton, and the role that she has with the Northwest Kansas Economic Innovation Center. Her role specifically focuses on child care, and we'll be able to connect folks with that. Some of the other things that we've been working on, or that you might have seen in our community since the last time we presented, we did write a letter of support for the Child Care Center opening for Hayes Med. Obviously, if you've been driving around on their campus, they've been making some significant strides in that project, and they are set to open in August of 2023. So obviously, that project will specifically help their staff with child care needs, but the nice thing is that when they open up those 77 spots, some of the areas where they've been receiving care throughout the community will be opened up for other people too. So we know that that's going to have a very positive impact. And we've recently also worked with Child Care Aware of Kansas to write $47,000 worth of grants that will specifically help Learning Cross Preschool with their expansion project, as well as Hayes Area Children's Centers project to add some additional spots over the summer and hopefully through next year. So we are still waiting to hear feedback from them if we've received those grants, but know that those funds will be well used to help open up some more capacity. We've also written a letter of support for the Kansas Children's Cabinet Accelerator Grant. You might also be aware that Grow Hayes is working on the Grove Child Care Project, and that letter of support was specifically geared towards that. They will receive $170,000 worth of funds from that specific grant proposal that was written, and there are also additional funds available through other means that should hopefully fund the rest of that project. So we're very excited for their progress as well. We've added special child care provider membership through the chamber since that point in time as well. The goal with this in mind was obviously to connect folks with the Blue Cross Blue Shield health insurance. We know many providers don't have access to quality and affordable health care themselves. So for any providers that have 2 or more people on their staff, this could be an option for them. And then also, we've been working on some unique things like a food program for child care providers. We'll actually have our second meeting to discuss those details here later this month. The goal is to try to get quality and affordable food options for child care providers. Obviously, when they have a lot of little kids that they're trying to track throughout the day, cooking those meals is one extra hurdle and obstacle that they have to overcome. So we're hoping that this option could potentially be something where food could be delivered to their home or their center. That way they wouldn't have to worry about preparing food for the children. And then also just working with organizations such as Dana's for a substitute pool. We know that it's challenging for child care providers to be able to take personal appointments, maybe take care of their parents or their own children during the day, because they would have to close their child care business to be able to do those things. And we know that that also has a direct impact on our workforce and has an opportunity cost for our businesses. So that will be something that we'll hopefully share more on as more details are unveiled. Some of the long-term goals that we've been identifying, back when we started our efforts in 2021, we had 700 spots that needed to be opened in order to address all of the child care needs. And I'm proud to stand in front of you today and say that that number has decreased down to 518. That's just over the course of 18 months. So we as a county have made some wonderful progress in a short while, and it's all because we have a lot of engaged people working on this issue. Hosting quarterly child care provider professional development series workshops. This is something that will start in October, and it'll be a great way for our child care providers to connect with one another and work on their continued credits for certification that they're required to do every year. They are required to have 16 hours of courses to maintain their license. And then just working with our different businesses in town to let them know that there are options for them to help be a part of the solution, whether that is stipends for childcare for workers to stay employed, or if they want to do something more significant, like explore options for having some sort of daycare provider come into their facility and help take care of kids, or just even supporting childcare providers that are currently in that business model. And then we'll continue to write different grants as we progress throughout the rest of this year and next year as more opportunities and child care centers or in-home providers have that need. And then essentially some of the other things that we've been working on, Donna Hudson-Hamilton, she's the Executive Director for Early Childhood Connections. She's actually working with Hayes High School to do a CDA track there. That would be helpful because folks would be able to actually graduate high school and go to Fort Hays State University to get some further credentials and be better poised to start a child care business sooner than later. So the nice thing about that CDA certification is they could also go into centers or work with in-home providers to help provide care for those kiddos, and they would already have some of those requirements done. The only other steps they would need to take at that point in time might be to do fingerprinting and background credentialing. And then we also know that there's a need to have second shift care in our community. That's currently not represented right now, as well as care for children that have, unique needs. We don't have a lot of resources for child care providers to be able to fully support kids that come from different backgrounds, and so giving them the resources they need to help ensure that all children are thriving is something that we're going to be figuring out how we can help with that too. So this map is actually from the Child Care Aware of Kansas report that they did, and I just wanted to, the stat that is so important here is our community is actually in such a stronger position than many others across the state. For every one child care spot that we have open, there are currently up to 10 children who need that spot in Ellis County. Some communities, that number is more like 40 children needing that one spot. So we're actually not as bad as some of our cohorts across the state, but it's still something that obviously we need to be working on. And then we've been fortunate enough with our efforts ongoing for a while now that we've received a little bit of free publicity as well through Hayes Post. We've been grateful that they've been attending most of our child care task force meetings, and so they've been kind to share our progress and continue helping us share that story. And we were also featured in the, this is a publication, that Child Care Aware of Kansas did for one of their newsletters, and we were featured in that as well. One of the most exciting events that we held this year that was different was our Child Care Provider Appreciation event, and we scheduled that for May, and we had about 75 folks show up to that event. I have to tell you that it was a very humbling moment to walk into that room and to see so many people who had never connected in person before. They have a couple of Facebook groups that they engage with one another throughout the year, but many of them for the first time got to actually meet these people in person. They shared stories of, no one's ever gone out of their way to say thank you to us before. We feel like glorified babysitters sometimes, and people take us for granted and don't truly know what it's like to put ourselves out there to provide care for kids. So it was a very wonderful evening. We were very grateful for the opportunity to say thank you to them, and this is the exact type of thing that we need to be doing to elevate child care as a profession in our county. So it is our intention to continue this event on an annual basis and to hopefully get more of our business community involved in that. Shifting a little bit to some of our point-in-time data, so Child Care Aware of Kansas does phone calls on a regular basis with child care providers across the state. So this is how they get that data set. But you can kind of see, this is our snippet for Ellis County. We had in 2021 8 child care centers. That number has stayed true through 2023. The number that's interesting, though, is the licensed family group child care homes. In 2021, that number was 84. We dipped down by 10 in 2022. But I wanted to just kind of share that we've done a nice little recovery, and we moved back up to 81. So I do think that there's some good movement happening. One thing that is not necessarily on this radar is we have a lot of folks who are in the child care business that are retiring right now. So as they're retiring and getting out of there, it's going to be important for us to make sure that we have more folks who can come and step up when they are ready to finish their careers. Another stat that I wanted to share from that child care data set was just the gap that we have with the number of spots that our facilities are licensed to have versus the amount of children that they're actually serving. And the big part of that is workforce. It's challenging for them to have enough people on their staff to actually offer all the spots needed. Or we might have in-home providers who are licensed to have, up to 10 children, but maybe they only want to have 6 children in their care. So that is why that number is important, because although we might have the capacity to give care to more children, that number looks different based on the type of options that people want to offer. And then last but not least, from the point-in-time data survey, I just wanted to show kind of some of the differences for the rates that are charged on a hourly or weekly basis. Our child care providers do a wonderful job trying to keep care at a reasonable cost, but they also need to make a living too. And so you'll see a little bit of disparity in the rates that are charged at a center versus the rates that are charged at in-home businesses. And so that number is important to understand as well. And then that number just kind of continues on for the average part-time rate and full-time rate for the care. I wanted to share a little bit with you some of the exciting things that our marketing has been doing for childcare lately. And so we have been working on a child care provider awareness campaign. This goes directly back to the funds that you were kind enough to invest into our cause. The one that I'll play first is from a local child care provider, Tia.
I'm Tia, a childcare provider in Ellis County. Finding childcare is a struggle. Starting my own childcare business has given me the opportunity to stay at home with my children and make a positive difference for other families. Building lifelong relationships, achieving milestones, and watching sweet babies sleep are all job perks. To connect with local contact to start your own childcare business, call 785-628-8201. Brought to you by the Child Care Task Force of Ellis County. Consider becoming a child care champion.
This next one will be one that we did to get resources in front of our local providers.
Are you looking to become a child care provider or further develop your current child care program? There are resources available to assist you every step of the way. Apply for licensing, receive professional development training, and learn about assistance for your child care program by visiting ksqualitynetwork.org. This message is brought to you by the Child Care Task Force of Ellis County. Be a child care champion.
And the last one I'll play for you is one that actually was just recorded this week. This will be more geared towards getting resources to our businesses and understanding what options they have to get involved in helping with childcare.
There are many barriers that prevent parents from entering the workforce. Childcare cost and availability are just a few. I'm Mike Morley with Midwest Energy, and I want to encourage employers to start the discussion now on how to help break down those barriers. It may seem like a big task for a small business, but there are solutions. Visit the Chamber of Hayes and the Ellis County Child Care Task Force to see how your business can help support your staff through initiatives or through direct donations. Help grow our community. Be a child care champion today.
Paid for by the Child Care Task Force of Ellis County.
So a few things that I just wanted to also share. Our OTT that we've been doing, the over-the-top programming, has gotten nearly 40,000 views since we've started this campaign. And then we've also done a couple of pushdowns on Hayes Post. And of course, we'll be starting a social media campaign focusing on our current providers. So we'll be doing some questions for them to really highlight, how long they've been in business, what do they enjoy the most about being a child care provider, and really, again, just creating some more positive visibility for that profession in and of itself. So I know I've taken a lot of time and you have other things on your agenda today, so I would just pause for any questions or if you had anything that you would like us to continue working on.
You have affordable childcare is kind of one of the biggest. What constitutes affordable?
So there's a stat that the national average, and Dana might need to help clarify on this, I think it's 7% of a family's salary would be considered affordable childcare. And in Ellis County, we are much higher than that. We're probably at least double that for what is spent on childcare. So that's definitely something that we need to help with. We know that there are some folks that, if they have to have a couple of kids within childcare, them working may not necessarily be enough to offset the expense of them having children in care. So that's something that we are cognizant of. And there's a term called market failure. Childcare is still in market failure. We need to figure out, there's a lot of funding out there to support childcare initiatives right now, but that funding will likely go away at some point in time. So we're going to have to continue being creative with the resources that we have available at the local level to augment that cost.
And what do you think one of the biggest challenges to developing childcare has been? Is it the licensing program that has to go through, or what's been one of the biggest hurdles that you found?
From the provider standpoint, one of the things that they've shared with from the very get-go was the amount of requirements that they have to have regulation-wise in order to be a provider here in Kansas. Kansas is one of the most heavily regulated states in the United States for childcare. And so interestingly enough, at our last task force meeting, we actually discussed that KDHE is going through a regulation study right now. And so they're looking at every single childcare regulation for the state of Kansas. And they actually have a survey opportunity for people to look at the regulations and weigh in on, what concerns they have. Are we too limiting? And the thing is because of the regulations we have in place, there's reasons why they exist. It may have been that some child care provider misstepped somewhere, and so that regulation was created to provide a safer environment for children going forward. And so we just need to make sure that the regulations are lining up with current things that are happening in our communities and supporting, our legislators. I can share that, Representative Wassinger attends as much as her schedule allows, and I know that she's very open to having those discussions at the local level too. So we've been fortunate to have good dialogue there.
Thank you.
Michael?
Well, my just personal comment, my youngest will be, when kindergarten starts here in the fall, he will be out of daycare, and that'll be after 12 years, we won't be paying for daycare. So I'm looking forward to that, because the cost, when you say affordable, I mean, at some point we were paying for 3 kids at one point for daycare, and that 7% in Ellis County is way higher than 7%. So, but my other question, something that piqued my interest, you talked about the high school program and going through it. Maybe I'm tying things together that don't go together, but your chamber event on Friday, the luncheon, you had the management development from Fort Hays there. Is there any connection there? Because that's kind of interesting to me, that you could go to high school, and if you think that's going to be your career, you get some credentials, but then you go through Fort Hays, and they talked about what is the university's role in not just being a traditional 4-year. They talked about these other paths that people can take if you need extra credentials, if you need courses. So I wonder if there's a connection there, because that's to me, that's very interesting. You talked about the high school and then the presentation that we listened to on Friday.
So you definitely hit the nail on the head. I know Fort Hays is currently working on opportunities for students to actually get credit for time spent in a child care center or an in-home provider's home for part of that, credit base for the hours that they have to receive. So I don't know how far along they are in that. It's been a little bit since I've been able to engage with Lainey Rhodes from the college. She's been kind of our liaison for their effort and just making sure that the things that we discuss at a child care task force level are being shared at the university. But we do have opportunities, and obviously having Fort Hays State University here in our town is a very large resource for us, and so we need to be tapping into that potential as much as possible. So I'm hopeful that there will be some programs developed here over the course of the next year or two that would allow for some of that to happen.
I think that would be great. You guys are doing good work. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah, for what you do. I do kind of have a question related to that. The new one at the Hays Med, is that fully staffed already, or are they still working on?
I don't have an update on that. I do know that the last time I spoke, they had a contract arrangement for the people who would be the directors. I'm not sure from a staffing standpoint if all of their other staff that would be required to keep the spots open. I'm not sure where they're at in that process, but I could probably figure that out and let you know.
Okay, and then also the appreciation thing, the pictures don't lie. I know a lot of them people in there, and I'm sure they were very appreciative because, like I say, I know them all, a lot of them, and yeah, so thank you.
Well, again, we just wanted to say thank you for your support of our efforts. We really did appreciate that investment and the work that we're doing, and we'll continue to be as good of stewards with those funds as possible, and we're happy to come give another update whenever you're ready for us.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay, the Shinchin Road paving, Darren.
Good morning, Commissioners. Darren Myers, County Administrator. Before you this morning is a option to mill and overlay the Shinchin Road from the 183 or Highway 183 into and past Shinchin just to the bridge on the west end of Shinchin. It's about 4,800 feet, just under a mile. As the Commission is aware, KDOT had a contract that was bid out and awarded to Venture Corporation to do South 183 from the South County line up to Hays, and then to bypass around over to the 157 exit at I-70. Brendan would be here today, but he's on vacation. Told him I would take over for him on this, and so he didn't have to call in or make any changes to his vacation. But with the state contract, Brennan reached out to them since they had already set up their hot mix asphalt plant, bringing in all their materials, their milling machines, and all their equipment, as if we could piggyback off the state contract and extend their project from the Shinchin Road that I just described. So before you is a bid from Venture Corporation in the amount of $181,000 to mill and overlay that, just as they did on 183 and the bypass as well. This is not a budgeted expense that was planned for, just for the simple fact that we didn't know when we're putting these budgets together that KDOT would be awarding a project like this in Ellis County. So we're just trying to capitalize on their project from the state, so there wouldn't be additional mobilization fees, additional fees to get more rocking equipment, more equipment, the machines and staff back out here. So Brendan did get the quote from Venture Corporation for that $181,000, and it's before you this morning for approval. They're wrapping up 183, so Brendan will reach out to them today after I get back with them if the commission does approve, so they can start working down there almost immediately. Maybe not this week, but as soon as they wrap up their KDOT project. And stand for any questions.
Gentlemen?
I have no questions. I move to approve, I guess, the PO 7731 for the mill and the overlay of Shinchin Road.
Michael, any discussion or anything?
Yeah, I'll second, and I do have, just for my clarification, so Venture's doing the current KDOT project. We're just asking them to, once they're done with that, to do it. It's not okay.
Yep.
Just so I'm fully clear.
It'll be a separate
How
project.
far are they going south on before they're done with this?
Rush County.
All the way down to the
All
Rush
the way
County
down to
line.
Rush County, so.
Okay. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to capture that instead of I mean, if we had to go and rebid it and do it ourselves,
Well,
like you said,
just-
mobilization would cost us more, so.
Kind of just a comment I had shared with Darren earlier is when the previous commissions were talking with the Ellis Avenue projects, they were much higher, considerably higher numbers. So I felt that this would be a good way to go and at least get a good road out of it.
Yeah.
It's one of them things like we were talking early in other occupations, that be proactive. If not, that road's going to go sour quick. So I think it's a good, and for the price and the job that they're doing that I've noticed on the road, I think it's an excellent move. So,
How will they, so if you live in Shinshin, I mean, how long will it take them to do that? And is there an alternate route? I'm not real familiar with.
I imagine they'll just do, since they have their pilot cars and everything, they'll probably just pave one side of the road and then re-asphalt it and then move
Fine,
traffic
yeah.
over to the other. And since it's not very, they can head straight north on 240th too, to get up to Hayes, but obviously some prefer the blacktop road, but Brendan didn't indicate that they would actually close the road down for that purpose.
okay, we had,
If you do want some more information, I can get Brendan to get you a detailed plan of essentially the detour and the workaround for that. And we will
Yeah,
make public service announcements.
I'd appreciate that, just to have an idea. That way, if anybody, I don't know why they would call me, but sometimes they do, just so that way we kind of have an idea what it's going to do and what the detour could be.
Yep, when I call Brendan, I'll make sure he visits with Venture to get a time frame of when they'll start, and then get a plan of action so we can put the public service announcement out for what sides of the roads and when, and so that way the Shinshin residents out there can know what's going on.
And they'll is that road striped, or they do the striping as well when they,
We'll do the painting after that.
we'll do it? Okay.
okay, gentlemen, I heard a motion and a
It's been
second.
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
I will add too, I did mention it to Nathan, I don't know if I visited with the other two commissioners about it. I did ask Brendan for the consideration of 48th Street up north of town, and as another potential project to extend with this, but I believe they're called the transverse cracks that are protruding up through the surface and has the mastic sealing and lining in it. Milling it down and overlaying it would only be a temporary fix. All those cracks would just pop right back up through it again, and the road would be just as bad as the shape it is now. So that's wasn't a good fix for 48th Street, but we're still working on that since our last grant last month was not accepted by the state.
Okay, thanks, Darren. Okay, the revenue neutral rate, Darren?
As the commission is aware, each year we have to consider with the budget for the following year as to whether the county commission wants to, what the next year's budget is actually going to be looking like, and if we are going to plan to exceed the revenue neutral rate or not. As the commission is aware, we've had several budget discussions as to what the commission's priorities, intentions, and goals are for the following year, mainly with the acquisition of the dispatch center, the employees that are over there, doing a heavier or a budget increase for the public works to do more asphalt road maintenance, and the change of the cost share project or cost share program out at Noxious Weed. We would be exceeding our revenue neutral rate for 2024. Our current mill levy rate is 37.575 mils. After Bobby did her evaluations and sent the notification over, our R&R rate was 33.93 mils, and it is expected that we'll be right at that 37 to 37 and a half mil, with a goal of trying to reduce that a little bit in the following year. So with that, I just basically ask that it is the commission, if it's your intent to go through with those plans, that I have the forms that are attached to the agenda filled out, and I'll give those to Bobby today, so she has her notification that we will plan to exceed the R&R rate and have a scheduled budget hearing on September 12th at a regular commission meeting.
For clarification, though, this is to say that we may exceed our R&R rate, but doesn't mean that we're actually going to budget that out.
Correct.
exceeding.
This isn't the actual,
This is just setting up the meeting so the public has comment, and we have to have a public budget meeting for that.
correct. It doesn't really necessarily change the public hearing. Even before the R&R rate, we had the tax lid before the R&R rate. We still have to have a budget hearing, but since the new statute in regards to county and city and municipal governments require that if you do exceed it, you do have to have that public hearing. And even if things do change in the coming month or two, if the county commission would say, we want to do 40 mills, or we want to reduce all the way down to 30 mills, or even under the R&R rate, this doesn't actually set what the actual budget is. It's just basically stating that at this point, we intend to exceed that R&R rate and have the budget hearing, and the final budget will be determined in essentially the final draft from the commission, from you all, will be in August.
This more or less doesn't tie our hands.
No, it does not. We still do not have to exceed it. We can still go below it. It's just basically states this is our intent at this time.
Okay.
And basically gives public notice what the rate is.
Yeah,
Could
what
be.
the rate, our current mill levy rate is, and the R&R rate, if, with the valuation.
Do we have to pay for the mailings on this year, or is the state covering that, or?
This year's is covered yet by the state, so I told all of the taxing entities that I have to send budget information to make sure that they prepare to pay next year for 2024 mailings. And I know Darren and I discussed that, and that's something I want to discuss with the commissioners. The statute says that the clerk may charge the taxing entities. I reached out to my clerks association to see what they were all doing, and it was kind of a mixed bags of things. Most of the small counties said they were just going to pay for it all. Some of the bigger counties said they're going to do the proportionate share, which I was given a spreadsheet on that I shared with Darren. So basically, my question to you guys is, do you want me to charge the taxing entities for their proportionate share? Which would be next year.
Yeah.
But I've already had USD 49 call me to ask what the estimate is. And the only thing that Darren had kind of said to me that I didn't think about is, let's say next year we don't exceed the R&R. So in essence, we wouldn't have to pay for our share, but the other ones do exceed it. We would be stuck with paying an $18,000. That's about what it cost me last year to mail out, was $18,000.
Could really scare taxpayers, say we have to raise the mill just to cover the mailing to send out to tell them we're raising the mill.
I know. I'm hoping that it changed sometime soon, but right now, that's where we're at, and the state is not going to pay for it next year, just this year's.
Okay.
I will
and
say-
one more thing. We discussed earlier before the commission meeting started that rates are going up. So when I mail this year, it's going to cost each piece 3 more cents.
On about 18,000 parcels, I believe it is,
How many
total.
pieces I mailed out?
Wasn't it about 18,000?
No, 33,000 pieces I
33,000.
mailed out.
So it does add up quick.
Yes.
And Bobby's, and the spreadsheet that she got from the clerk's count, I believe, was from Harvey. Is the Harvey County Clerk is who put it together, and it basically has, the formula is you list all your taxing entities, which I believe there's probably about 20 in Ellis County with all the surrounding school districts, the R-388, 432, and 489. And they got the fire districts, the townships, you got the cities, the county. But basically, you take that all up, and then you add up what the overall mill levy is, and then what their portion of that mill levy is. So like the school district, since you brought that up, they have 3 or 4 different taxing entities. So if they're if they're 10% of the total, they would pay 10% of the mailing. Since they're 10%, that's seemed like a fair and equitable way to split it. If the total mill, if they had 10 and the total mill was 100, they would pay 10% of those mailings. So that was, I thought it was fair and reasonable, and it sounds like that was also shared with other county clerks around the state as well.
Correct.
And that would be a budget implication that if you didn't want, if the county wants, if the commission wants the clerk to pay for that, we would have to adjust her budget up on top of what the mailing fees will be increased to, but also to pay for all those taxing entities as well.
Any thoughts? Darn if you do and darn if you don't.
Yeah. It's all the taxpayers' dollars. I mean, the taxpayer is going to pay for it one way or the other. I mean, that's the unfortunate side of it.
That's my standpoint too.
It is very interesting where our state legislatures will come back and say we need a lower property tax. They keep pushing the counties to lower property tax, and then they come up with solutions like this to essentially do the same exact thing that we're doing and send out 30-some thousand mailers to every single parcel that's out there. If you're one person that owns 100 parcels, you will still get 100 pieces of paper in the mail, and then they force the county to pay for it after 2 years of doing it themselves. But yet they want us to lower property taxes, but then they give us these state mandated requirements of things we have to pay or pass along to somebody else to make it look like essentially the county's the bad guy for something that the state is forcing us to do.
Mm-hmm.
They're good at that.
I don't have any more thoughts. I'll have to put me on the spot. I don't know. I'll have to think about that a little bit more, and I'll kind of get back to you on my how.
Do we need to make a decision on the splitting of that stuff today?
I mean, we really, it just says in a statute that the clerk may.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I really look at it as if the county would not ever exceed their R&R, I feel like it's only right that other taxing units that did exceed their R&R should pay for it. So I feel like it's a good practice to start now. And, that's my personal feeling on it, that you start something now, and that's how a couple of the other clerks had kind of commented on that. There's a time that we don't exceed, and we're still there, and they may get upset that we're often charging them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't exceed, they don't pay? Is that how that?
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay. I mean, I feel that's about as fair can be on it.
As Michael said, we don't have to have a decision today. You can think about it, and then when we meet on our budget session on July 18th, we can make any changes at that point if needed.
The only thing is I have 49 asking for an estimate. So I know they're working on their budget. So I know
And they want an answer when?
Yesterday.
last week, I just told them that I was trying to figure out how the proportionate share was going to work.
For them, to me, it'd be safer for them to go ahead and budget for it, and if we
And then if you decide.
decide some other avenue, it would only lower their budget. But I would hate to pin them into essentially not budgeting for it, and then we say, yeah, you should have. I think so. I guess that would be the safest route for them to take, is just to go ahead and budget for it, and we can have further discussions, and maybe we find a sharing avenue, but that would only help them as far as budgeting, I think.
It is also possible, because there was a bill pushed through, or it didn't go through this year, there was a push at the state to maybe make it that the state would pay for it for another year or two, or make it permanent, but it did not pass. So there might be something that comes through in January next year as well. But at the same point, whether the school districts or we budget for it and that passes, either one of us could be let off the hook at least for another year or two if something does change.
Yeah, sounds like another thing to twist our legislators' arms about. So. Okay.
So is there a possibility that you could touch base with 489 and ask, and hey, the 18th, is that too late, or do you?
I'll probably get with them this week.
Okay,
Because I know they're working on their budget.
very good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, coming back to our initial conversation, I think we need to go ahead and at least be able to use it if we need it, but to exceed the revenue neutral rate for the following year's budget. That doesn't mean that we're going to, but I think we need to have the option out there if we need to make
needed.
adjustments in order to do that.
Yeah,
I will
that's fair.
pass these forms along to the clerk after the meeting.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right, thanks. Okay, Darren, you're on the hot seat again. Commission report, county administrative report.
Not a whole lot. It was somewhat of an uneventful weekend with the 4th of July. I hope everybody had a good July 4th holiday. We do have one bid out on our website for the replacement of the skylights at this building. I just released it on Friday. That was one of the insurance, covered insurances from the hailstorm that we had a while ago. And then hopefully this week we will be meeting with another roofer and have a meeting with our insurance in regards to the roof of the law enforcement center for bids on that, and hopefully get that project bid out within the coming week or so as well, so we can start moving forward on that. If the commissioner remembers, we looked at trying to put a new false roof over top of the law enforcement center, and the bids came back in significantly over what our budget estimate was, and even way over what the insurance estimates were. And so going back, visiting with K-Camp, visiting with a couple local roofers, trying to get a new bid to either recover or replace the roof. And we're working with our insurance agent to see what they will cover. So a recover basically is just putting a new skin over the current roof. And a contractor says that it can't be done because of the damage that's underneath. So they want to completely re-roof it, which means take off the EPDM, I think that's what it's called, the black roof, all the decking and all the insulation down to concrete, and then replace it completely, which more than doubles the price. So we're working on whether K-Camp will cover that or not, and if they won't cover that, it'll be an option to come back to the commission as to whether we want to replace it or go with the insurance and just recover it. So that should be coming hopefully maybe by the July 18th meeting, if not the 1st of August for approval. But other than that, that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Okay, county commission reports.
At this time, I have no report.
Okay. Michael?
Yeah, I just want to take a moment to thank those individuals and groups that kind of do the behind the scenes and the dirty work during this weekend, particularly the Boy Scouts. So after each night of the Wild West Fest and the events that go on down there, the Boy Scouts show up at 7 o'clock each morning and pick up all the trash and the beer cans and the cups and everything to get it, put the chairs back so it's ready for the next night. And then after the fireworks show, they show up down at Fort Hays and pick up the mortars and all that stuff. So it takes a lot of effort, so I want to thank the Wild West Fest for their efforts to put on the event each year. It's a great event for our community, for the community that participates and goes to the events. Without the participation, there's no reason to have an event. So it's great that people have something to do in Hays, and then again, behind the scenes and the kind of the dirty work by those organizations and individuals that kind of clean it up and put it back together, so that way there's a reason to have it in future years. That's all I got.
Okay. I too was a boring life, but I would like to thank I noticed there was 100 calls again that our volunteers at the county went out and were away from their families, so I do appreciate that. So that's all I have.
I'll move the Board of County Commissioners recess to executive session for 15 minutes under the following exception to the Kansas Open Meetings Act pursuant to the attorney-client privilege exception. The subject to be discussed during executive session is contract negotiations. Open session will resume at 9:35 in the commission chambers. Those in attendance, in addition to the Board of County Commissioners, are Bill Jeter and Darren Myers.
Oh, you're all, just a minute, that's fine.
Exit executive session at 9:35, no action taken. So I'll move the Board of County Commissioners recess to executive session for 15 minutes under the following exception to the Kansas Open Meetings Act pursuant to the attorney-client privilege exception. The subject to be discussed during the executive session is contract negotiations. Open session will resume at 9:50 in the Commission chambers. Those in attendance in addition to the Board of County Commissioners are Bill Jeter, Darren Myers.
I'll second that.
Executive session at 9:50, no action taken.
Motion to adjourn.
Yep, motion to adjourn at 9:51.